We are in Eindhoven, and you wrote a book with the title Care No One Does, but before that we talk about this one, because this is the Artist Run Europe, and there you mention a lot of artist run spaces in the whole Europe. I mean, from Dublin to Berlin. And that's a kind of similar what I do with Paris Budapest Metro, that I always looking for new artists and new spaces, new interesting people. So how this curiosity came from, that you work with a lot of people?
Well, first of all, the book is not written by me. It's edited by Gavin Murphy and Mark Cullen, who did a tremendous work in making this book. They are co-running Palace Projects in Dublin, an artist-run space. So then I contributed with a text about the situation in the Netherlands, more or less. So that's the only contribution I had, which they allowed, so to say, because they are running this project. I was happy to support their the book and their research and their work, because it's a relevant topic. And what is particular about this book is that it speaks about how running an artist space can also inform artistic practice itself, individual practice. So it's about this synergy and about almost like a research model for individual practices, as well as to expand a little wider. So, you know, like you can have different scenes in local communities working around similar topics, or who kind of feel like they need to do something together, and then things grow in a synergy of those voices. And that's kind of interesting as well. That's also how I often started projects. You know, it's just friends, and then you see who is able to do what, or would like to do this or like to do that.
Art sometimes is a little island and little family, where everyone, it looks like that everyone knows each other, but from outside it's very hard to approach.
Well, I don't know if it's that closed. The art world is a big idea. It's I don't know. I think it's maybe also partially a myth. To me, it's just people doing stuff somewhere. And if you connect with someone artistically, culturally, in tone of voice, you know, you can just as well reach out and say, "Hey, I like your work," or drop by, or send an email. Especially if you want to do something together. That's also part of artistic necessity, you know. So artistic necessity, like the art world, is maybe like this big idea that is kind of abstract and remote. But to me, artistic necessity is also about people finding each other because they sympathize, or they feel connected in a similar language or expression, or whatever you might want to call it, that they want to share, that they want to produce, that they want to make. What this book also shows, that this is a kind of a little bit underground network. So it's especially the artist run. You know, when you speak about the art world, you think of museums and galleries and blah blah, all this poo-ha stuff. But underneath of all the poo-ha, there's a lot of, you know, just people trying to create, you know, with their hands literally in some kind of dirt, to see what comes out of that dirt, if they can process it and find a way to express it. And also organizing that has always been something that I've been interested for. It's relevant, but it's also different again. So it's different from the poo-ha big art world. But it's there, and I think if you are willing to connect, if you're willing to open up also in that precarity, in that vulnerability of that situation, then there's also a lot to find, and to, you know, the connections that people can find, the things people can do together. For people from the outside looking in, or wanting to participate, or wanting to enjoy or experience, I think it's good to understand that it's just, you know, it's small, it's precarious, it's vulnerable. Treat it with respect and honesty, and you'll get a lot in return. You know, I like to try and open it up and increase the width of it and the reach, but that's maybe up to other people to do, not to artists per se.
I had a conversation with Alex Redding, who is the Luxembourg Art Week organizer, and actually mentioned that only less than 10% of the artist students from artist universities are actually becoming a real artists who get money only from art. And where goes the other 90% is a question. And another interesting fact that a lot of people come to the art world without any formal background, I mean artistic background, because that's also possible. So so if I want to be an artist, okay, that's fine. I can go to an art university, I can learn from someone, I can do a lot of things, but of course the galleries has of course limited possibilities to work with people, so they work with 20-30 people maximum, not more. So the rest of the people, if they want to stay in the art world, can find place in these artist run spaces.
Mm-hmm.
Or they just abandon art.
It's an open profession, you know, anyone can be an artist in a way. But I think forms of expression, and be it more amateurish or whatever on that line. What is amateurish, I don't know, but what is professional, I don't know. Is that when you make money? Not per se, you know, there's a lot of professional artists who I think are kind of crappy. There's a lot of amateur artists which I find interesting perhaps. So, you know, it's a difficult range, but that range is determined also in a kind of sphere of dialogue, of conversation, and that's what is nice about cultural production, I guess. You know, culture is not something static, it's something that is produced and discovered all the time by both individual people in a liberal society where people are open to live their lives and experience and engage with what is around them also on their own terms and to grow or see and feel. So going back to artist-run spaces, I think these are spaces that people can also easily self-initiate. You know, you can do it in a living room, you can do it in a shed, you can do it in a garage, you can do it in a public park. You can organize stuff wherever you want. You can call that artist run or just a meetup or whatever you might want to call it. So to anyone interested to have conversations or to share experiences, share emotions, and imagine what that could be, I think, you know, that's just the beauty of it. And artist run is a name for sort of self-initiated projects.
Maybe one path could be for someone who are basically interested in, I mean, general culture. So interested in culture anyway, maybe about poetry, maybe about literature, maybe about paintings or sculptures or whatever, or just some kind of dialogue with someone. That first, I think the biggest institutes and museums comes to the mind, because if you type into a search machine that what is coming first, and then maybe you go there, you see some artists you like, then you maybe go to a big gallery because you know only big galleries at the first time. Which steps can someone who are basically interested in art but knows only the big institutes or the big galleries, coming to the level when might goes to I don't know, Eindhoven, and they come to, let me pick one,
the Fabriek or something small, yeah. In one way you're speaking about offer and having a clear offer about that somehow, so it's also a kind of marketing thing. You know, small spaces, small initiatives, they're less visible, it's more difficult to find them. And then, you know, you can have a conversation about visibility, about public support, about all of these kind of matters. But I think and that's where I always distinguish between the ethics in the cultural field and the morale, the more personal aspect of it. And then I come back to this more liberal element that I mentioned before. I think for individual people, for anyone curious to live life, you know, there's a lot of people who are interested in, I don't know, whether it's mindfulness, whether it's, but to kind of make their lives grow somehow. And that can be via many paths, but it's an open, tolerant conversation. And I think to me that is almost artistic already, because you're dealing with material, you're dealing with how you're positioned there. And I think that curiosity, but also that resistance to open up to life at large, I think that is something people should maybe, or I never get why people do that so little. With the internet you can find anything, unless internet is blocked if you're living in, I don't know, some kind of repressive state. You can explore your language, you can explore your search terms even there, you know, on internet. So you can find small artist-run spaces and just go there, even though it might feel like, you know, it's a little remote.
Yeah, but maybe life is not that simple. I mean, for example, in Brussels, there are in every area, they call it arrondissement, so it's a small part of the city, there is an open library, which is absolutely free. And not many people go there because first they don't know, they are a bit shy or they have other reasons. I don't know.
It's also about activating the library and creating a community there, but also a community that crosses, and I think that's what many cultural institutions like libraries, who are or kind of public institutions, often do, that they work for specific target groups. You know, so sometimes they target philosophical groups, sometimes they target minorities and help support, you know, so it's still segregated. It's not about meeting per se. And that's difficult with marketing and how the branding world kind of works, that you have to get your audience in, and you do that by appealing to audiences that kind of know that you know are interested for this. So if there's a demand, or they try to appeal to a demand, while I think it's also good to work offer driven, just to create something which is new and just throw that at people, confuse them. Confusion is one of the most beautiful things there is. That's the poetry on the tip of your tongue, you know, where you kind of feel like something could be happening but you don't quite know. That's the best offer you can make. Going back to the libraries, I think that it'd be good also if they're a little bit more provocative perhaps. And if people accept that provocation and are curious about provocations, then you also again need to trust people, trusting that they provoke because they want to engage with you, you know. A provocation is not that they want to smash you in the face, you know. That can also be a provocation if they're really, but it can also be an opening. Arnon Grunberg just quit from the Humo magazine, the Belgian Humo magazine, maybe you heard, because of the column by Herman Brusselmans and how Humo dealt with that. But these conversations are really good, because on one hand you see Herman Brusselmans, who might be provoking in a smashing manner, almost, you know, is that too aggressive or not? On the other hand, you see Arnon Grunberg, who is a really good provocative figure, but is more moderate in a way. So, you know, I don't think that Herman Brusselmans is actually saying like we should stab knives in Jewish people's throats. I don't think he wants to do that, but he's expressing something else in a way that might be a little, you know, communicatively speaking, expressively speaking, too rigorous to create this tolerance. So what kind of provocations appeal? How do people deal with provocations? There are provocations all the time, you know. I think it's really important to keep remaining a liberal world where we have freedom of expression. But what expression brings these people together, and what expression is maybe a little too easy or so? That's difficult. Personally, I don't quite know that myself as well. You know, I might also be too expressive and too easy at times. I'm sure I am, because I'm an expressive guy. Like I've been answering with lengthy answers now and just keep on rattling, you know.
I'm not sure if people provocations, you know. I mean, when you go to social media, you see that everyone's life is so beautiful and so rich and so cool, like, in any way. If not that it's faster and faster and faster. So in this way, what they want is basically entertainment, and entertainment you can get, okay, in a big museum you can get, maybe, but maybe you don't get from an artist run space. Maybe you can, but I'm not sure.
It's not about affirmation per se in an artist run space, so something that confirms a certain status, that kind of confirms your safe environment, your environment where you know, can develop yourself. And it's also difficult, you know, because it's easy to say that something is a facade, that you know, people on social media show themselves as a facade. If language is reproducing itself, so if people start speaking the same language in certain groups, then it's about also reproducing themselves, and then it's not about individuality anymore. So yeah, then it's way more conformist, and that's a risk to people. Conforming can be easy, but in the end we are not quite conform, you know.
I want to talk about, especially in the artist run space situation in Netherlands. How is it going? Maybe what I know is the French example, because there the Parisian scene is very strong. There are a lot of places, a lot of movements there, but also on the countryside there are many small things. Also in Belgium, many artist run spaces exist, and not only in the capital but throughout the whole country. In this book, The Artist Run Europe, you mentioning that there's a lot of space, of course, in Amsterdam. I'm not sure if in this manner we should take, like we can do in France, that okay, there is Paris and the rest of the country. So can we say the same in the Netherlands?
Many artists go to larger cities because artists also need to make money, and ideally they make money with their art instead of something else. So galleries and people who buy money or bigger commissioners are often more situated in larger cities. There's also a more vibrant community of critics, of, you know, people in that field. That's one side of this kind of segregation you address. Segregation in terms of you know, where you have like hotspots and not hots. People also to self-organize as artists. There are advantages and disadvantages to both, I guess. Finding more like-minded people in a specific field is easier when the amount of artists and cultural expressions is more rich. You know, then you can be more specific and have your own kind of little group. If you work in a smaller city or in a countryside, then, you know, things start to shift. Often it becomes more amateuristic in the sense of not being recognized by the national or international field. It's also perhaps more difficult to find access to kind of reputations and support. Therefore, the idea also, as we called it in the Netherlands, spreiding, of dividing funding, public funding over the country and also to the islands and the Dutch overseas territories is really relevant to connect that and to support that. It's difficult, and it will always remain difficult. You know, like a city like Eindhoven, there's students coming here for the design academy, and they might stay for a while, but then they often move out to other places again. So it's a temporary place where they stay. In the meantime, they might initiate something, and they might start collectives in one way or another.
I mean, if I want to open an artist run space, maybe the best is, of course, the capital, because there are many people around. I can easily get visitors. But also in is there in the countryside is the possibility to go deeper, because then you are not distracted all the time, and then you can work freely.
Yeah, well, I think any artist, anyone always needs to balance concentration and networking. If you have this spectrum of a very communicative artist doing fast work and the romantic artist, so to say, doing slow work, kind of hidden, both have their opportunities and limitations. But there's also advantages, yeah, to the countryside. You know, it might be easier to find space. You know, a big, stable where they used to have cattle or whatever, or an empty church or something, which is way less difficult to find in bigger cities. The Netherlands is small, so you know you could say the Netherlands is one big city in itself, but it doesn't feel like that to people.
So going back to your new book, Care Where No One Does, I think you might want to give a kind of a cookbook how to do independent things, or at least kind of explanation on that, what is important there and how you can do, let's say, cultural production.
What you're saying very much touches on what I try and do in the book. Over the years I've been working to produce this kind of, you could say, alternative progressive voices, and to support that, to create a community and build little institutional things. And I've always experienced at the time there was this neoliberal flow, and now we're slowly moving into this national conservative era. Nationalist conservative, that is, yeah, you have the Paris, Budapest metro, so you kind of know the vibes. And I think, you know, that this culture, this environment also shapes conditions to produce, to remain independent, to become more independent. Independent, to me, not only means that you can do something as a one-off, but it also means to build an infrastructure, to build a sphere where people can sustain themselves also on a longer term. So the idea of independent practice is not just, you know, painting something on a public wall or painting something on a canvas, or, you know, it's also about getting that out and creating a kind of resistance and basis in a culture at large. I have my ideas about that I developed along experiences I've had over the years. And I did not want to speak about my experiences, but I did want to share my ideas about how to organize that, some structures, some lines. And it's up to people themselves to see how they feel about that, what they can use or cannot use. But I think it's important to create a truly independent, so independent to some extent of public funding, independent to work also with the market. So it's partially entrepreneurial, which is kind of at friction with the idea of independence, you know. So if you work kind of market-based or want to work in a market, that is something that many people already resist to within the leftish and creative community, because entrepreneurship is a dirty word. But if you take entrepreneurship in a precarious situation where you work more grassroots and really try and push it and create this, then you're independent of public funding, which is good, because especially from neoliberal to this national conservative times, we know that things are changing. We know that we cannot rely on the government, which is the people. The government is the people at the end in democracies. So we need to organize ourselves a little.
Thank you very much.